the Golden Owl Podcast.
Speak better, fly higher.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Golden Owl Podcast. I am Daniel.
And I am Maya. And today we are talking about something that I personally have very strong feelings about.
Oh, yeah? Good feelings or bad feelings?
Both, honestly. Both.
That is actually the perfect introduction to today's topic because we are talking about meditation. And I think a lot of people feel exactly like Maya just described. They have complicated feelings about it.
Right. Like some people hear the word meditation and they immediately think of a monk sitting on a mountain with his eyes closed for 3 days.
Exactly. Or that guy at work who always says things like, I just need to center myself. And everyone is kind of like, okay, cool, thanks for that.
Oh, I know that guy. Every office has that guy.
Every single office. But jokes aside, we actually wanted to make this episode because meditation is one of those things that everyone talks about, but nobody really explains properly. Like, what is it actually? What does it do? Is it just sitting quietly and trying not to think about your shopping list?
Because that is literally what I thought it was for the longest time. I thought meditation just meant you sit down, you close your eyes, and somehow your brain goes completely quiet and peaceful. And I tried that once, and within about 30 seconds, I was thinking about whether I needed to buy more oranges.
I love that. Very on brand for you.
I mean, I really needed those oranges. But that is actually such a common misunderstanding about meditation. People think the goal is to have zero thoughts, and when thoughts come, which they always do, people think they failed. They think, okay, I am terrible at this, meditation is not for me.
And then they never try again.
Exactly. But the actual idea behind most forms of meditation is not to stop your thoughts, it is to notice them. You notice that your mind went somewhere, and then gently, without being angry at yourself, you bring your attention back. That's it. That is the practice.
So it's less about being perfectly quiet and more about practicing where you put your attention.
Yes, and when you think about it that way, it makes so much more sense. Because our brains are incredibly busy. We are always thinking, planning, worrying, replaying conversations from 3 years ago at 2 in the morning.
Oh, do not even start me on that. Why does my brain do that?
It's a human thing, and meditation is kind of like going to the gym for that part of your brain. You're training yourself to notice when your mind wanders and to bring it back, over and over again. And every time you do that, you are actually building a skill.
Okay, so I want to talk about my first real experience with meditation, because I think it is a good example of everything you just said going wrong in the most human way possible.
Please tell me everything.
So this was maybe 2 years ago. I had been painting a lot at the time, and a friend of mine told me that meditation could actually help with focus and creativity. So I sat down one evening, I found a quiet corner, I put my headphones in, and I pressed play on this beginner session. The voice was very calm, very nice. She said, "Focus on your breathing. Notice the air coming in and going out." And I thought, okay, I can do this. This is nice.
And then your brain happened.
And then my brain happened, yes. I started thinking about a painting I had not finished. Then I started thinking about whether I had enough flour to make dough balls at the weekend. Very important question.
Obviously, the most important question.
And then, at some point, the calm voice said, "Well done, your session is complete." And I opened my eyes and I thought, I don't think I meditated at all. I just sat with my eyes closed and thought about bread.
Okay, but here's the thing, and I really want people to hear this. What you just described is not a failure. That is literally what meditation looks like at the beginning. Your mind wandered, and at some point, even without realizing it, you probably did bring your attention back at least once or twice. That counts. That's the whole practice.
I genuinely never thought about it that way.
Most people don't, and I think that misunderstanding is the reason so many people try meditation once, decide they're bad at it, and never go back. But there is no such thing as being bad at meditation. There is only practicing and not practicing.
That's actually a really beautiful way to put it. So let's talk about the different types, because I think a lot of people don't realize that breathing and sitting quietly is just one version of it.
Yes, this is something I find really interesting because when I started looking into it more seriously, I was surprised by how many different forms there are. The most well known one is probably mindfulness meditation, which is what we were just describing. You focus on your breath, you notice your thoughts, you come back.
That is the one most apps are based on, right?
Mostly, yes. Then there's body scan meditation, which is where you slowly move your attention through different parts of your body, starting from your feet, moving all the way up. It sounds simple, but it's actually incredibly relaxing.
I have tried that one. I always fall asleep during it.
Falling asleep is basically a 5-star review for a body scan.
Honestly, fair. What else is there?
There's visualization, where you imagine a peaceful place or a positive outcome for something in your life. Some people use it for confidence before a big presentation or something stressful. Then there's walking meditation, which I personally love because I find it very hard to sit still for long periods.
Walking meditation? So you're just walking and that counts.
You're walking slowly and paying close attention to every single step. The feeling of your foot touching the ground, the movement of your legs, the air around you. You're fully present in the experience of walking instead of being in your head.
That actually sounds like something I could do. I walk to the shop quite a lot, and usually I'm just on my phone the entire time.
Exactly, and that is the opposite of walking meditation. But the good news is you do not need a special cushion or a quiet room or an app. You can practice attention and presence almost anywhere.
I think that's something people really need to hear, because there's this idea that you need the perfect setup. Candles, silence, a specific time of day.
Which brings us to something I really want to be honest about, because when I first started taking meditation more seriously, I struggled a lot. And I think people do not talk about the real difficulties enough.
Oh, let's absolutely talk about that. What was hardest for you?
The restlessness. I'm not a naturally still person. I like doing things. I like being busy. I like having something to focus on. So sitting down and doing what feels like nothing was genuinely uncomfortable for me at first. There was this voice in my head saying, "You should be doing something useful right now. You are wasting time."
That guilt of sitting still, I know that feeling.
And it took me a while to understand that this is actually exactly why meditation is useful, because most of us never practice just being. We're always doing, producing, scrolling, consuming, and meditation asks you to stop all of that, even just for 5 minutes, and that feels strange because we're not used to it.
For me, the hardest part was the impatience. I kept waiting to feel something, like I wanted this big moment of peace and clarity, and I wanted it on day 2.
And did you get it on day 2?
I did not get it on day 2, no. I got slightly annoyed on day 2.
Which is very you.
It is very me, yes. But I think that's a really common thing. People start meditating because they heard it reduces stress, and then the act of trying to meditate stresses them out because they feel like they're doing it wrong.
And the science is actually really interesting here, because the benefits that researchers have found are not about any single session. They're about consistency over time. Your brain actually changes with regular practice. There's a part of your brain called the prefrontal cortex, which is connected to focus, decision-making, and emotional regulation. And studies have shown that people who meditate regularly have more activity in that area.
So you're literally building a different brain.
Slowly, yes. And another thing that gets a lot of attention in the research is the effect on the amygdala, which is the part of your brain that responds to stress and fear. In people who meditate regularly, the amygdala becomes less reactive over time, so things that used to stress you out start to feel more manageable.
That actually explains something I noticed after maybe 3 or 4 weeks of trying to be consistent. I was in a situation that would normally make me quite anxious, and I just felt this small gap between the stressful thing happening and my reaction to it, like a tiny pause.
That pause is everything. That's literally what you're building when you meditate, the ability to choose your response instead of just reacting automatically.
And it was not a dramatic change. I did not suddenly become this Zen person. It was just a small shift that I noticed.
I think that is so important to say. The changes for meditation are usually quiet and gradual. You do not wake up one morning feeling completely transformed. You just slowly start noticing that you sleep a little better, or that you are not as irritable, or that you can concentrate for longer without reaching for your phone.
Speaking of phones, can we talk about apps? Because I know a lot of people start with apps, and I have tried a few.
Yes, let us do that because I think apps are a genuinely great way to start, especially if the idea of just sitting in silence feels too intimidating at first.
Yes, let us do that. Because I think apps are a genuinely great way to start, especially if the idea of just sitting in silence feels too intimidating at first, which for me, it absolutely did.
Same. Having a voice guiding you through it removes so much pressure. You do not have to think about what you are supposed to be doing because someone is telling you. And there are some really good free options out there. You do not have to spend any money to get started.
I tried a few different ones, and honestly, the most important thing I found was not which app you use, but whether the voice and style feel right for you. Because some are very calm and slow, and some are more energetic and motivating, and it really depends on your personality.
Completely agree. I actually stopped using one app because the music they used made me feel slightly stressed instead of relaxed, which is the opposite of what you want.
That is a disaster. Anti-meditation.
Exactly. But I want to say that apps are a tool, not a requirement. Once you get a basic understanding of what you are doing, you can absolutely meditate without any technology at all. Just you, your breath, and a few minutes of quiet.
And that is actually a perfect bridge to something I think is really practical and useful, which is how do you actually start if you have never done this before and the whole thing feels a bit strange or intimidating?
Okay, so my number one piece of advice is to start embarrassingly small. And I mean that seriously. Do not start with 20 minutes. Don't even start with 10. Start with 2 minutes.
2 minutes sounds like nothing.
That is exactly the point. It sounds like nothing, which means you will actually do it. Because the hardest part of building any new habit is just doing it consistently. And 2 minutes every day is infinitely better than 20 minutes once a week.
I completely agree with this. I made the mistake of starting with longer sessions because I thought shorter ones would not count. And then some days I would skip because I didn't have time for the long version. If I had started with 2 or 3 minutes, I think I would have been much more consistent much earlier.
And you can build up gradually. After a week of 2 minutes, go to 5. After another week, go to 7 or 8. Let it grow naturally rather than forcing it.
What about timing? Morning, evening, does it matter?
The honest answer is that the best time is the time you will actually do it. But if you want a more specific answer, a lot of people find morning works well because you are doing it before the day gets busy and before your brain fills up with tasks and decisions. You are starting fresh.
I'm personally a morning person, so this worked really well for me. I meditate before I do anything else, before I check my phone, before breakfast, even before painting. Just 5 or 10 minutes of quiet to start the day.
I am honestly jealous of morning people. I am definitely not one of them.
You are very much not one of them, no.
So for me, evening works better. I do a short body scan before bed and it genuinely helps me sleep. My brain tends to be very active at night, lots of thoughts running around, and the body scan just slows everything down.
That is such a good point about sleep, because I think sleep is one of the most underrated benefits of regular meditation. People focus on stress and focus and productivity, but the sleep improvement is huge.
It makes complete sense when you think about it. If you are training your nervous system to calm down, of course that's going to affect the quality of your sleep. And better sleep affects literally everything else. Your mood, your concentration, your energy, your patience with people.
Your willingness to deal with difficult situations without losing your mind.
Which is a skill I'm still working on personally.
We all are. But this is actually something I want to connect to everyday life because I think sometimes meditation gets presented as this separate thing you do for 10 minutes and then you go back to your normal stressed life. But the real goal is different.
Yes, this is so important. The formal practice, sitting down and meditating, is really just training. The actual point is to bring that quality of attention into your normal day, so you are more present when you are having a conversation with someone, you notice when you are starting to feel overwhelmed before it becomes a big problem, you eat your food and actually taste it, instead of scrolling through your phone at the same time.
I have been trying to do this with cooking actually. Just being fully in the process, noticing the smells, the textures, the sounds, and it genuinely makes cooking feel more enjoyable and less like a task to get through.
That is a beautiful example.
And for me, it has been with exercise. I study sports science, so I spend a lot of time thinking about the body, but bringing mindfulness into physical activity is a completely different experience. You are not just going through the movements, you are actually inside the experience.
It changes the relationship you have with what you are doing.
Completely. And I think that is the bigger picture of what meditation offers. It's not a solution to all of your problems. It's not going to fix a difficult situation or make a hard decision easier, but it can change how you relate to those things. There's a little more space between you and the difficulty.
That little space is actually everything, is it not? We talked about it earlier with the stress response, that pause before you react.
And I think for younger people especially, people our age, that space is genuinely hard to find right now. We're so used to constant stimulation, notifications, content, noise, everything moving fast. Meditation is almost like a counterculture thing at this point. Choosing to be bored for 5 minutes is actually quite radical.
I love that framing. Choosing to be bored as a radical act.
And it connects to something I find really interesting, which is that a lot of the things we reach for when we feel uncomfortable, scrolling, eating without being hungry, watching something just to fill the silence, those are all ways of avoiding being with ourselves. And meditation is the practice of being okay with just being with yourself, even when it is uncomfortable.
That hit me quite hard the first time I really sat with it, because I realized I was quite uncomfortable with silence, and I am someone who spends time painting, which is a fairly quiet activity, but there's a difference between quiet with something to focus on and quiet with nothing but your own thoughts.
And what did you find when you sat with those thoughts?
Mostly that they were not as scary as I had been treating them. A lot of the things I had been avoiding thinking about were just ordinary worries that needed a little attention. Nothing dramatic. I had just been running from them without realizing it.
I think that's probably the most honest and valuable thing about meditation. Not the brain science, not the productivity benefits, not the sleep improvements. Just the simple act of sitting with yourself and discovering that you are okay, that you can handle your own inner life.
And on that note, I think we should do the thing we promised at the beginning of this episode. A very short breathing exercise. Just to give people a taste of what it actually feels like.
Yes, let us do it. Okay, everyone, if you are in a safe place to close your eyes, go ahead and do that. If you are driving or doing something where you need to stay alert, just keep your eyes open and listen.
Take a slow breath in through your nose. Fill your lungs gently. Hold it for just a moment.
And breathe out slowly through your mouth. Let it all go.
One more time, in through the nose, nice and slow.
Hold it.
And out through the mouth, easy and slow.
Just notice how you feel right now compared to 30 seconds ago. Even that tiny shift is real. That is your nervous system responding. That is meditation working.
And that is all it takes to begin. 2 breaths, 1 minute, 5 minutes. It does not have to be complicated or perfect or spiritual. It just has to be yours.
We really hope this episode gave you something useful today. Whether you are completely new to meditation or you tried it before and gave up, we hope you feel a little more ready to give it another go.
And remember, you are not trying to become a different person. You are just practicing being a little more present as the person you already are.
That is genuinely beautiful, Dan.
I have my moments.
You really do. Thank you so much for listening to the Golden Owl podcast, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a comment below and let us know. Have you ever tried meditation? What was your experience? We would genuinely love to hear from you.
And if you know someone who has been curious about meditation or keeps saying they want to try it but never does, send them this episode. It might be the gentle push they need.
We will see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves.
Bye, everyone.